I'm your host, Dr. M, and you're listening to Aligned You, a podcast to assist you to truly be aligned through your body, head, and heart so you can reach your full potential in your own unique way. Hey there, Aligned You listeners, Dr. M here, and welcome to this week's episode. Well, this week's episode I was originally going to be calling Reset, Recalibrate and Reframe, and then when I was looking back over the Aligned You episodes, I realised I've actually done a Reset and Recalibrate episode before, because there has been a few iterations of me getting Aligned You going again. For those who've been following me for a while, you know that my podcasting career started back in 2017 with my first podcast called Be the Queen of Your Stress. And I dropped a weekly episode, folks, for about 3.5 years. It was probably closer to it would have been 3.5 years that I dropped a weekly episode before that it evolved into my current podcast, although it's having a few iterations, called Aligned You, which is all about body, head and heart alignment so you can be performing at your best in your own unique way. Well, folks, you would know I've had a little bit of a hiatus of actually recording live. There's been a variety of reasons as to why. I will not bore you with all of them, but the red hot news off the press is I am back, baby. I am ready to create a rhythm that you can expect a weekly drop of not just audio, but as you can see today, depending on what platform you are viewing this, perhaps, or if you are listening to it, you are getting the audio version, is that there's also a new YouTube channel for Aligned You. So there will be weekly drops of me live, because apparently that's what all the kids are doing, and it's quite easy to do at the same time, and it's stepping up my game. Part of the reason why I haven't actually been recording over the last, really 6 months live or on a weekly basis is we've had a lot going on in our world. The universe has sat me back on my butt a few times over the last 6 months. And through that period, I wasn't feeling inspired. I didn't understand at that point. I didn't have a clear vision. Not that I didn't understand. I didn't have a clear vision as to where I saw the podcast actually going and what was its purpose and all the questions, all the big questions of why now and what am I doing and do people want to hear what I have to share? It was a big occupant conversation going on in my head. And then I realized for a few different reasons that was a whole lot of rubbish. So I am back. You can expect weekly episodes dropping. They'll drop on a Wednesday, all going according to plan. There will be my usual format, or the format of the past, where it's me, myself and I on a regular weekly basis, as well as keep your eye out for my next interview series, all going according to plan. It will be dropping in August. I have 7 amazing entrepreneurs and business owners lined up. We're going to be talking about what actually they align to thrive. I'm fascinated when I talk to people that have success in whatever walk of life they're in, and their definition of success is their own. And it's people that I think are freaking awesome. And what are there in terms of common themes between them all? Does everybody get up at the same time? Do they eat the same things? What is it? What's that secret sauce that they have that enables them to get more done in a way that actually serves them and enables them to have a life that is lit up, for want of a better way of describing it? So keep your eye out for that in October. Behind the scenes, since I've not been recording, there's been lots going on. Mostly behind me right here is I'm sitting in my podcast studio in my beautiful integrative chiropractic practice here in Alexandria, Mitchell Road Chiropractic. And for the first 6 months of the year, it was really all about getting MRC on track, folks. As a dear friend asked me when I was moving my very established practice from down the south coast of New South Wales back to Sydney, her question was, how do you do that? And I said, well, you don't. You start again. And not only did I start once, folks, but I started twice. The first place that I started practicing in Alexandria wasn't quite the right fit for me, and I knew I needed to create something that was big enough to hold all that I am and all that our community needs. So hence, in the start of 2021, for those who are new to the Aligned You podcast and new to my world, it's the start of 2021. Rapid firely, this space was designed by the amazing Addie Hooper and branded by the amazing Emma Scott to create the most amazing healing space for our community and our clients to be able to come and enjoy having their brain and body aligned. However, one of the beautiful things about the last couple of years, as I'm sure most of you have experienced, there's been lots of curveballs, right? So all the things that I thought were going to work to help people know where we were kind of weren't working. And so over the last 6 months, I've had to put my head down, my butt up, and do the work to actually get MRC up and running in the way that I foresee it really, what's the right way of putting it? in a way that honours the space that it is. Because for those of you who have been into MRC, you know it is a really beautiful space. And so it deserves, the entity of MRC deserves a thriving practice within it that gets to help lots of people from all over the world, really. We have lots of locals that come into our practice. I also have clients that fly down from Brisbane. I have people that fly in from Melbourne. And I think we're going to have a winner as far as who's come furthest. I believe one of my clients is coming in from the States to come in for care. So the space is really beautiful, but it also needed some work to be able to create the momentum behind it. And I have a few people to thank for that. Number one is I have my beautiful wife, Ames, to thank. She's actually recently, or at the start of the year, left her 13-year social work profession to actually come and be the general manager of MRC to help keep it in alignment so that I can do all the things that I'm best at. Big thank you to Pauline Wen, who's one of my dear friends. I consider her to be family. She's also a mentor. And we also run our 2 retreats together, Ziva Life Collective, which you would have heard me talking a lot about, which is our women's retreat. That is a transformational retreat that's been running for the last 8 years. And it's usually sold out solid for 12 months in advance. We always keep a couple of spots up our sleeve for people that might be procrastinating. So if you are keen, please reach out because our next one is in February 2024. And I'm super pumped because in October 19th through 22nd, we actually have our all-new, all-gender retreat, which couples are welcome, but it's not a couples retreat, called Unio. And Unio is about the sacred union. And one of the things that I have realised, and that has slapped me back on my butt multiple times, is what's most important is our sacred union with self first before we can actually be in a sacred union with anyone else. And it's been such an interesting last 6 months, really understanding that and really feeling into that as I'm coming into a brand new space. So why now? Why am I back on Aligned You? And what's this reset, recalibrate, reframe business all about? Well, I suppose over the last few years, I've had rapid fire of that, in that there's been so many changes, is that I really needed a clear intention as to what Aligned You was all about. Because originally, Be the Queen of Your Stress started out as a catalogue of information for my clients down the South Coast. It's actually why it's 15 to 20 minutes, because when I was living down there, it took 15 to 20 minutes to get anywhere. And I wanted it to be a one drive worth bite of information that hopefully could make a difference in your day. Because one of the things that I've done over the years, if I've invested a truck ton of money into my own education, self-development, self-disruption, and my evolution and elevation. And so if I can share that with my clients, then that makes it worthwhile getting up every day of the week. In the same way as getting to do my hands-on works with my clients, and be really honest, there were periods of time over the last few years where I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my hands-on work. But there's been shifts and changes in how I'm approaching practice that has really lit my fire back in terms of being able to really have impact into people's world from that brain-body connection. Neuroplasticity and our body's ability to connect through our innate intelligence is phenomenal. And that's going to be an episode for a different time. I won't get too stuck into that. I could go off on a big tangent, Aligned You listeners, as you well know, but I will try and stay on point today. So as I said, why now? Well, now I have a clear intention as to what Aligned You is going to look, sound and feel like, in the sense of, if you have caught this on the YouTube channel, you realize there is video attached now to the audio. No me cheekily recording sometimes in my jammies, people. Folks from home to make sure it got up on time. No more of that. We will be live on video as I'm recording, so you can see the beauty that is behind me as MRC. I love being in this space and I love getting to share in this space too. The booth that I'm actually sitting in was installed back in May 2021. It was designed so I could actually interview people in person. But then at that point, we were still wearing masks. Can you believe that? Far out. It feels like so much longer ago. But we were still wearing masks back then. Long story short, it really wasn't getting used until recently. And now it's that moment of going, oh, I was just a bit ahead of my time in terms of having the equipment. But if you've listened for many, many years to my podcast, you'll know I actually owned the podcast mic for 4 years before I actually started podcasting. So I'm feeling that there's some improvement at the moment. It's only taken me 2 years to get it up and running and figuring out how it was all going to run. Sometimes the technology isn't up to where I'm up to, and I feel like that's the case. And now there's other technologies out there that make this a whole lot easier for this a little bit tech slow human. Whilst I can use it, it takes me a minute to get my head around it, and you'll enjoy this story. This is actually my second version of recording today's episode. The first version I didn't have the right mic connected, which the irony of that, folks, is, and it did make me chuckle when I finally figured it out. The irony of that is that my very first podcast back in 2017, I did the bloody same thing. I'd recorded the whole thing. I was so proud of myself. I'd got it all on tape, I thought. And then I looked and went, oh my God, my mic's actually been switched off the whole fucking time. And so I figured that is a good omen for this new version and the new iteration that is Aligned You. So what are we going to be sharing? We're going to be sharing over the coming weeks is around the 5 key pillars of Aligned You: spinal health, breath, inflammation, mood, and mindset. And for those of you who've been following me for a long time, you actually know that I love talking about all of them, but particularly mindset. So there'll probably be a bit more of that, but all of the pillars will get hit. For those of you who have never met me before, I am an integrative chiropractor. My big name is Maria Zushman, but I go by Dr. M because kids can't say Maria, so it got shortened to M a long time ago. And not many people call me Maria anymore. I don't mind it so much at the moment. I went through a long period where I actually hated being called my given name. I'm a bit over that now, but I still prefer being called Doc or Dr. M or M by the people that are really close to me. If you're calling me Maria, it's one of two things. You're refusing to call me what I would prefer to be called, or you just haven't heard me when I've asked. So that's a story for another time. I am an integrative chiropractor. I obviously have a podcast. I am a speaker, a facilitator, a stress adaptation, performance and alignment coach. I do speak around Australia, not just on a mic, but with organisations and corporate groups around stress adaptation, resilience, emotional agility, and a whole gamut of other subjects. I'm a Gallup strengths coach, also an NLP coach as well. So I have a few different bows in my pocket. I always get that around the wrong way. You know what I mean. I have a few different tools in my toolbox as far as I can help you. And for those people that come into my practices, it's hands-on work, chiropractic work to make sure that your brain and body is aligned in the best possible position. So your innate intelligence can really flow through your body at its absolute best. I had a conversation with some new clients that had come in this morning, and they'd had an experience with another chiropractor that I suppose what they were asking for is a second opinion. And it was fascinating because they kept saying to me, why do we need chiropractic? And my simple answer to them was, well, you don't. And they looked very quizzically at me. And I said, well, you don't. It's your choice whether you receive chiropractic care and whether you would like your brain and body to be connected in a different sort of way. In the same way that it's your choice to eat fruit and vegetables, or it's your choice to actually exercise. Do you need it? Well, no. Does it make your life better? Obviously, you do need food, but you don't need fruit and veg. You could live on other crap. Would you be as vital? Would you have the innate intelligence flowing through your body in the same way? Would you have the same sort of health and immune system and energy? All those things? Probably not. But that's where, when it comes to the various things that I'm talking about in Aligned You moving forward, folks, it's a choice. Take or leave the bits that suit you. And if you think I'm talking utter gobbledygook, then turn it off. But for what I know and what the feedback that I get from my clients and also the listeners of Aligned You is often I talk a lot of sense. And I usually share through experience as well. So I hope you enjoy the coming weeks. As I mentioned, it will be dropping on a Wednesday, all going according to plan. And I do say that because these days I do stick to the plan. One of the things that I really had to do was get out of my way as my own way. Have you ever done that, Aligned You listeners? It's going to be one of your homeworks for this week, is to check in. Where in your life have you got in your own way and you're actually stopping your own growth? For me, it was actually with how I was growing my chiropractic practice. I've actually coached other chiropractors in the past of how to grow their practices, and I was really struggling with MRC, for full transparency. Times had changed. Social media had changed. People were working in different spots. People working from home, they're not working from home. Everybody's schedules was all over the place. So I really had to get out of my own way and ask for some help. So I actually joined a really cool group called Practice Acceleration, because at the end of the day, sometimes people get a bit muddled when it comes to my chiropractic practice. It is also a business. I've got to keep the lights on. And so having people know where we are so that we can help people is super important. So I joined an amazing group called Practice Acceleration. Guy called Tristan Bond actually runs it. And it's through a couple of their trainings that helped inspire me to get back on the mic. One of which was by a guy called Ben Elliott, and it was a mindset training or audio that he was talking about. And he was talking about different levels of competence, that there's unconscious competence and there's conscious competence, and there's also conscious incompetence, and there's unconscious incompetence. Got that right? So unconscious incompetence is when you don't know that you don't know. Conscious incompetence is when you know you're not real good at something, but you're giving it a go anyway, so that you can bring it up into conscious level of competence, and then you get to a stage where you're unconsciously competent about stuff. Does that make sense? And for me, one of the things that he said that landed, and it was like a brick to my forehead, is that he said that, somebody who is consciously incompetent will beat somebody who is unconsciously competent every day of the week if they're actually doing it. And I can't tell you how it landed, folks, because I don't know if this resonates for you, but podcasting is one of those things I actually really love. It comes very naturally to me. I don't have to think too hard about actually delivering you the content. The tech stuff, sometimes I do. Today was a bit of a challenge, but that's another story. But, I was making all these excuses as to why I wasn't podcasting when there are other people that are doing it, and they might not do it with such ease, but they're doing it and they're showing up. And it was that moment going, oh my God, I've got to get back on the mic. Was number one. The second thing was from one of the awesome coaches, Max, who he had done one of his think tanks, and he was talking about the differences between KPIs and KPAs. And KPIs being when you set a goal, but you don't necessarily do anything to get to the goal, or KPAs being the key performance actions that you're taking, and that setting standards that you actually meet in life. And I guess that's one of those things as well. Again, full transparency. It was like, wow, I need to set myself some new standards or reset the standards. And one of those things that I've reset is the fact that I'll be podcasting on a much more regular basis, and we'll be getting back into interview series, and we'll be doing all the things that I know I really love and I know make a difference in those of you who listen to my particular podcast, or hopefully you're still listening. We'll see when I upload it tomorrow. But at the end of the day, it's one of the things I'm unattached to these days, in the sense of I really, really am doing this for consistency and to be able to keep my levels of creativity up. Because one of the things that I've really become acutely aware of, particularly over the last few months, is when I'm being super productive, it actually expands the space for me to be creative. And one of the things that then allows me to be better in all aspects of my life is when I'm fulfilling that part of my system, is to actually be sharing information in an educating point of view. It's actually one of my soul missions as to why I'm on the planet, but that's a story for another time. One of the things that I do know, and again, some of you may have fallen into this trap before, so it may or may not resonate for you, is that I fell into a trap where I was sitting too much in the esoteric, if you like, in the sense of doing a lot of work on my spiritual development, in terms of being able to sit in enjoy in spirit more and more often, and to be in a very expansive state. But I wasn't doing any of the 3D get off my ass stuff, as my dear friend Pauline Wen puts it, to actually get the stuff done of what I was actually magnetizing. And it reminds me of the story around, some of you would remember the book The Secret, and there are a lot of people still sitting in their driveway waiting for their Ferrari to show up. One of the things is, from a manifestation point of view, when you're actually magnetizing things to you, actually still have to do stuff. And I kind of missed that memo for a couple of months. But in saying that, I was doing quite a few other things, and there were some other issues that had knocked us on our butt a few times that needed dealing with. And again, I like showing up real and authentic. And if I don't, said to the same clients this morning that were asking me if they needed chiropractic care, is that sometimes I am too straight up for people, and I will always tell it how it is. And I think that that's where I'm excited to say I feel like I'm back in a space where I can share on a regular basis and thoroughly enjoy doing so, because I always want to show up to you guys 100%, and raw and real as always. So they've been my key learnings. And the last thing I want to share with you, if you haven't been watching the Matildas over the last month, where have you been? But particularly if you're Australian, I can't tell you how many lessons I've learned from watching them, and the way that they have carried themselves over the last month or so, but even further, because they've been getting filmed for the last couple of years, in their trajectory into the FIFA Women's World Cup. And one of the things that I love about it, there's a few lessons out of it that I'll share. One is that as a kid that loved playing sport and played a lot of rep sport when I was younger, is it was so refreshing, and I just was so excited. I was driving over the Harbour Bridge a few weeks ago, and on one of the massive skyscrapers, there was this huge picture of Mary Fowler, and on the other side of Caitlin Ford, and they looked like fucking superheroes. And I got teary, because as a kid, if I'd had a female role model like that, I just would have been beside myself. And then the next thought process for me was, how freaking cool for my nieces, who are 7, 10, and 11 at the moment. I think I've got that right. Well, no, 7, 10, and 12. They've all just had birthdays, so I've got a bit confusing. 2 out of 3 have anyway. And so how cool for them that as they're growing up, that is actually the role modeling that they have. I think that's super cool. The other part that I think is super cool about the Matildas and their journey over the last little bit, as an openly gay woman, is to actually see a team that, and it doesn't matter what their sexuality is or how they identify, but what's really cool is there is they all identify in their various ways, and it doesn't matter. The country has actually embraced them. They have transcended all the bullshit that often gets thrown around. So I'm so in awe of that. And the last thing that I'm actually in awe of is the fact that it was actually Ellie Carpenter in one of her interviews, and she's only 23. She was talking about as being a 12-year-old watching the Matildas play at a stadium that only had 300 people watching them. And at that point, she set a goal to actually play for the Matildas. Now, picture that. In a bit over 10 years, they went from having 300 people watching them to a stadium full, one of the biggest stadiums in Australia, full, 75,000 plus, watching them play. It blows my mind when they were playing England in Sydney. How much can change in such a short period of time? So I get so much heart and inspiration out of that, because I think about how much can change in my world, and I look back over the last few years, and those who've been listening know there's been a truck ton of change. Some of it hard, some of it unreal, and all the in between. So much can change in such a short period of time. And you get to decide which way does it change, because you're the one that's being able to take those daily actions that are actually putting you in the right direction. So Aligned You listeners, your homework this week, if you choose to do it, you don't have to, is just take a little self-check. How are you going with that? How are you showing up? How do you want to show up? And is there any key performance activities or actions, thanks Max, that you need to actually take that are going to shift the dial and head you into the right direction? It might not have you on a microphone and looking into a camera. For me, it did, because it was that kick in the pants, brick in the head, whichever way you want to describe it, that actually made me realize that I was wasting one of my talents by not being on the mic. So I hope you are happy to see me back, or to listen to me being back. I'm looking forward to sharing with you every week, Aligned You listeners. All the usual ways to find me will be in the outro in show notes. Goodness, it's been a minute. But you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can now find us on YouTube. And I'd love you to follow us on all of those platforms so that I can keep sharing weekly content with you. I will be finishing with my top 5. Top 5 this week is song at the moment that is on very high rotation, is actually our morning song that we listen to on the way to work, is Giant by Calvin Harris. Reading right now, I'm not actually reading any books right now. I've been stuck into the Matildas over the last few weeks, and that's been super cool. I could talk about them all day, but I won't, because I know that not everyone's into them. But that's a story for another time. Quote of the week, it's Albert Einstein quote, which is to do the same thing over and over again and to expect a different result. I've paraphrased that terribly, but is insanity. And I feel like that is why you are seeing a new format for Aligned You, so that I'm just not repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a new different result. In terms of what I've done to align myself over the last couple of weeks, is a big component of that is really getting into a different sort of daily breath practice, and also meditative practice that Ames and I do every morning before we come to work. It's a yin breath practice, story for another time. And my final thought for this week is, it's never too late to start again. There's lots of excuses that you can make sometimes. I'm speaking for myself, folks. There's lots of excuses you can make sometimes about why you shouldn't, could have, would have, all of those, all the wouldas. And then sometimes you just got to hit record and get back on the mic. So that's it for this week, Aligned You listeners. Hopefully this recording has worked this time. I look forward to seeing you and catching you next episode. Bye for now. And that's it for today's episode, Aligned You listeners. Remember to hit the 5-star ratings and share today's episode with your friends. And be sure to join our collective on Facebook and Instagram at Aligned You. Look forward to catching you next time. The information shared on a Line Due podcast is of general nature and for information purposes only. It is not specific medical or personal advice. You should seek assistance from your healthcare practitioner for your individual circumstances. Any information provided doesn't imply endorsement or third-party devices or products and cannot provide you with health and medical advice.